Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Colosimo. This is our seventh installment, our seventh episode of a new series that we are calling the Weekly Juan Diego. And I'm here today with our Vice Principal at Juan Diego, Mr. Drew Trost. Welcome, Mr. Trost.
Thank you, Dr. Colosimo. Happy to be here.
We're here to talk about this whole reading idea that Juan Diego started probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And there's all kinds of different facets to what we're doing with reading. But the thing that kind of takes the most attention is what we call reading break. And so for those that are watching who may not know what reading break is, could you just describe it?
Yeah, so we run a reading break, which basically means that the students go to their first 3 periods, and then at the end of their 3rd period, they go to what we call reading break in the auditorium. The whole school comes into the auditorium, and we say the pledge, we say a prayer, and then they read for probably about 25, 30 minutes. And then at the end, there's usually some announcements, maybe some video announcements, and then they move on with their day.
So why did we do that? Like what was the goal of the reading break?
So it actually started, the idea came from a kind of a reading guru nationwide named Kelly Gallagher. He had written several books about how the reading nationwide amongst high school students had kind of fallen apart. Not very many students read anymore. And so this is something that he recommended. And the idea basically is to get students reading, but really more than just like academic reading. The goal of reading break is to be what we like to call leisure reading, where the students are reading something that they would enjoy reading.
So how do they select a book? Are they forced to read a certain book, or is it wide open, or do they go to the library? How does that work out?
Yeah, so they can pick books lots of different places. They can do it at the library. We have several books. All of our classrooms, the teachers should have kind of personal libraries that they check out, and some of their favorite books. We like to see our teachers doing what we call book talks, where they kind of just briefly talk about a book that they really like and try to see if there are students that would like to read that book as well. But they can pick it up at their own personal library as well, obviously buy their own book. But our basic 3 rules is that they can read any book they want, there's no rewards and there's no punishment, and they can abandon a book anytime that they want. So if they're just like we would do as an adult, if they don't really like their book, we always say, well, then why are you still reading it? Yeah. Find a book that you like.
And are teachers involved in the reading program too? Do they go to the reading break?
Yes, so they sit there with their advisory, and we really want them to model reading. And so they get an opportunity to read and be right there with the students.
Do you think teachers like doing that?
I've gotten great responses from both teachers and students. It's a great way to kind of break up the day, a little bit of a mental relaxation time. Still getting stimulated by reading, of course, but not necessarily at the same degree of being in class.
Psychologically, how is the reading period sometimes just a psychological break during the day?
Yeah, so we talk about that there's, lots of reasons to read, and one of them might just be entertainment. And so they might be pushing hard through math and science and English, and then they get to go and read about dragons and kind of get a little bit of a break, like you said, and still, like I said, stimulating your brain, but something that is a little bit more entertaining and fun. There are also people read to learn, right? So they could be learning about all kinds of different things that they're interested in. But lots of benefits of reading for sure.
So Mr. Trost, is there, beyond just the physical act of reading in the auditorium during reading break, does it have any ancillary benefits?
Absolutely. So, over the past 5-6 years, we've seen our reading scores dramatically increase, which is really great. And that's obviously one of our main goals of reading break. But an additional goal that I think is really taken off is there's just some inherent benefits of bringing the whole school together daily. And to see them all together and to pray together was great, very powerful. We're doing student-led prayers now. They see, the video announcements are great. That way it really ensures that all the students are seeing the announcements. Yeah. But even just, simple things like, hey, there's a big football game this Friday. It's a whiteout. Make sure you're there. Little things like that, and coming together as a community has a really great benefit for our school.
Yeah, so it used to be that reading was actually a hobby that people had. And for years, when they would do surveys with high school students, reading was always ranked in the top 10 of the favorite things that students like to do. And then about 10 years ago, it just dropped out, and it has stayed out. And so sometimes students today look at that like, well, why are we reading? What is that? Whereas 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was always just a hobby that was accepted and done. And so what do you think has happened with society where something that for 40 or 50 years was a regular hobby that students have, that in the last 10 years doesn't crack the top 10 of a hobby that a student would participate in?
Well, I think students are really, consumed by their cell phones, by computers, by technology.
So maybe they're reading, but the reading is more electronic and more from their cell phone, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's not the same as reading a full novel from beginning to end, perhaps.
Correct. And that is another thing about the reading break that I think is unique, is they're not allowed to use screens, so they can't use a Kindle or anything like that. There's studies that show that they retain more and even kind of enjoy reading more when they're actually doing like a paper book. But yeah, I think that they get consumed with social media and videos and all those kind of things. And so there's a lot of benefits to going back to reading actual books.
Right. There was a study that came out this fall about freshmen in college. And it's reported that so many freshmen are entering into college never having read a book, a complete book from front to back. Wow. So you're 19 years old, you're on a college campus, you've read a lot, and a lot of it's the electronic reading you're talking about, but professors are now on college campuses having to adjust that they cannot expect that a freshman in college will have had the experience of reading an entire book from beginning to end.
Wow.
So it's trying to for Juan Diego, it's trying to find a place in the world, the learning world, that reading should exist. And maybe some of that is morphing into some of this electronic styles of reading, and maybe some of it is going back and hanging on to those old kind of customs of just reading an entire book from beginning to end. Mr. Trost, in thinking about this reading break that we have you found that there are other high schools in the state of Utah or across the country that have adopted a similar idea?
So I've heard of several schools that followed Kelly Gallagher's recommendations and did this, but most recently we've had 2 or 3 schools that have visited us and have copied the program. Yeah. They're running the exact same thing. They do it just like us, like basically in the middle of the day, about a 30, 40-minute period, and they do the exact same thing. So they're actually coming back in a couple weeks to kind of learn more and see what other things we do to promote it. What's also fun to see is that sometimes a book will really catch on and it'll kind of sweep through the whole school. Like there's a series called Scythe that a year or 2 ago, I think probably 60% of our school has read that book, and maybe even the second one too. I think there's 3 books in the series, and I know lots of students have read at least one, maybe all 3, which is kind of cool to see it kind of sweep through like that. But I'm also the basketball coach. We'll have books that our team reads, that they read in reading break, but I know lots of other teams and groups of students will read specific books like that too, which is great to see.
Now, before I let you go, and I know you're in you're very busy, you're in a hurry, so I thank you for your time today. But before I let you go, looking ahead, is there anything we're thinking about doing to improve reading overall or increase the reading experiences beyond what we already have in place?
Yeah, I think we're looking hard at ways that we can kind of reinvigorate reading and the reading break. One of the ways that we're going to start doing is using advisory breaks, using our advisory to kind of check in with the students and just see what they're reading, see if they even like the book they're reading. If not, helping them find a book that they actually like. I think having those conversations between an adult and the student about what they're reading and being able to encourage them, I think will be effective. We're going to try to just increase the overall culture of reading in the school as well. Have more book talks, have more just showing the benefits of reading, showing some reading, like why read videos in reading break, but just gonna do some things to get some more, breathe some life into the reading program, which I think will be exciting. I really do believe we have this kind of mantra that's kind of the heart of the reading break, and that's that if you don't like reading, you haven't found the right book. Yeah. And I really believe that's true. I've seen it with so many students where students tell me over and over they don't like reading break, they don't like reading, they're just not readers. And then all of a sudden I find them a book that they like and boom, they're reading like crazy.
Is there a book that today you might recommend generally to our high school students that, I mean, no book is like influential across the entire student body, but just off the top of your head, is there a book that you might throw out there that someone in high school might be interested in reading?
Yeah, one that I go to a lot is a book called Can't Hurt Me. It's by David Goggins. And what I like about it is, he was the only person to ever finish the special forces training in all 3 branches of the military. And he gives very real advice for how to be mentally tough. And, mental toughness is something that gets talked about a lot, but he gives some like actual tangible ways to improve mental toughness.
Yeah.
So I think it's really applicable, not only for athletes, but for everybody. I mean, we're all going to have tough things in our life. And he really does a great job with that.
Well, I want to thank Mr. Trost for joining us on episode 7 of the weekly Juan Diego, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.